Well, hey folks, how's everybody doing today? I'm doing pretty good. Hopefully you are too. Now, thought I'd do a little video here. And start out by saying it doesn't matter what hobby you always have equipment issues, like whether it's fishing or hunting or camping or prospecting or crocheting. I guess, every hobby has equipment that you use, and sometimes you're going to have to do general maintenance on it. So today I'm going to pull my stove apart and show you what I do to clean it. Last time I was out camping, I had a little problem burning, and I believe there was a clog in here. I thought maybe it had to do with the freezing rain, and that could have been an issue too. Could have had a little bit of ice formed in the orifice of this stove, and I'll show you what the orifice is a little bit and talk about that a little bit. But so I figured I'd tear this stove apart and clean it and show you how I do that. I would like to say though that this is not an instructional video. I don't want to instruct anybody on how to clean the stove and then chance of them using a gas stove and not doing something correctly and catching on fire and burning the whole town down. So this is not an instructional video. I just want to show you how I clean my stove. Well, the stove I'll be tearing apart today is this Peak 1 stove. It's a rather inexpensive stove. Get it at Walmart, $20 to $25 when I bought it. It might have went up, I don't know. But before we start tearing it apart, we just want to take a look at it. Kind of look at all the various parts that we can see and how they sit now and everything. So therefore, with these pot holder feet here, I'm not sure the technical name, we're going to call them pot holder feet. We're going to start off with them right in this position. Now as we open them, see this one is stationary, it does not move. Then they only go so far. That one will go so far. And then this one will kind of splay out from that one. And that one only goes so far. So what I'm going to do is take mental note that there is something down within the works of the stove that stops those legs from going so far. So as we put it back together, we're going to make sure that we put it back correctly. And we can do that by knowing that there are things that stop those legs, those pot holder legs. So as we take it apart, we'll start right with pot holder legs in that position. Now I have had this stove apart before, and when I first got it, I did not need a wrench to take this apart. And I've never put it back on really tight. I like having it so I can just unscrew it with my fingers if I have to. So that's how I got it. But if yours is too tight, if you have a stove like this and you are going to work on it, get yourself a wrench. I like to use a crescent wrench for this project because there's this nut in case it's too tight. And then the orifice is a smaller size, so we can just use one crescent wrench to do so. And I like to state the other tool I will use is a needle or something very fine gauge to put through the orifice. And I'll talk about that when we get to that part. So seeing how this is just finger tight, we can go ahead and not have to use a wrench and kind of pull it apart. But as I do, I want to make sure, since this is part of this, if this comes with it, see which it does, we're just going to try to keep that together as we pull it apart, just so we can visually take a look at it after it's out and make sure we get it all back together correctly. Hey, go on. Anything to do with heat you want to be involved, go on. Pain in the ass thermometer anyway. So now as we got this all apart, you can kind of take a look at this. And first thing I noticed in these legs, remember we're discussing that the legs only go so far on here. So we're going to check out what makes that happen. And I see a notch in this leg right here, which could have something to do with it. See if there's other notches in here. Kind of little on there. I'm not sure if you can see that. So I'm going to set that down just as it is and then look inside of here. And I do see something going on there. Can you see that? Little catch right there. And we know the other one stopped over here somewhere, so there should be one in here. One right there. Not sure if you can see that. Kind of bad using a red pointer to point at something red, but If you look in there, you would see it. Then right there we see the orifice. Before that, let's get back to here. Now the first time I took this apart, I was kind of clumsy with it, and as I pulled it apart, that spring fell out. And I was like, uh-oh, where did that spring go? Was it between the legs? Where was it? Between these legs or on top of it? Where exactly did it sit? So I had to trial and error. I finally got it put back together right, and I realized that this spring, which is, let me show you, it's kind of like I call it a spring because it is a washer. I guess it's a spring kind of washer, but you see how it's not flat. It's kind of got ridges in there, and it's made out of spring steel. What that does is it helps to hold everything together once it's in place. So this washer came off from there, and then the legs go on there. And you see the threads down in there. Can you see that? See the threads? So those threads screw onto there. So now we know that this spring goes over that, but it won't go past this nutted flange right here. I'm not sure if that's the right terminology, but that's what we'll use. And then these legs and the spring fit together. This is a little tricky. You got to put the legs over the burner plate first, and then they go on. So now we know, before we start tearing anything else apart, we know that that's how that goes. So we will keep that together like such, with the washer right there, and try not to lose that. And come back to this part. Now we see none of this unscrews except for this burner plate spins separate from this bottom part here. Now normally you would never have to clean this. I mean, if you have to, you could just wire brush it and just shake everything out, because there is quite a hole up in there. There's no restriction of gas up in there. So you could just clean it with a wire brush and shake it out. But if you do have to clean it and that does not work, the way it's held on here, if I'm not sure how good you can see this, but see this steel clip there? It's flat on this edge. Can you see that? Flat there. And then as you work your way around, it's round. So how that works is, underneath this flat part, there's a notch. So what I do is kind of hold things together. Then I'll grab onto that wire there and try to push it. Sorry if that, I know that's blurry. Out of that notch. Now let me show you where that was sitting. I don't know if you can see that, but there's like a groove there, or a notch, for that flat piece of wire to sit in. Once you get it past that groove, this comes right off. And like I said, there's a big hole in there. You should never have to worry about that. But if you do, that's how you pull it apart. And you can see this flange on here. See, it's bigger on the outside. It's smaller on the inside. So that goes over top of that, like so. And then to seal it back up, to close it in and secure it, you just got to spin that around. Spin that flat wire back into that groove, which is a little tricky, but just got to give it a little work and it'll go right back in there. Oh, not quite. There we go. Now it's in there. So we know how that's clean, and we know how that goes together for future reference even. We'll set that aside. Okay, before we get into discussing the orifice and how to take that out, I forgot to mention something about these legs. When you pull this apart, if for some reason they all come apart, you drop them or whatever, you don't know which way they go back together, just want to show you here. The very bottom leg, see, they go on the stove like this. So the one on the bottom is the longest one. And what I mean by that is this distance here when they are together and you're looking right at them. See if I can get this into focus here. Guess not. There we go. A little better. See, that one's longest there. And then the one below that is a bit shorter. We'll call it medium. then the one below that is even smaller. So next to the stove is the longest, then the medium, then the small. Okay, let's move on to the orifice. Now the orifice does not only regulate the amount of gas, I believe it regulates the way that it enters into the top of the stove so it can burn. And it's done so by a little hole right there. Different orifices for different appliances and stove have different size holes in them, and I believe different angle in the cut that comes out, so the gas will come out in different funnel shapes to burn accordingly to what the stove needs. Now for the orifice, I just wanted to state the control knob for the burn, high and low and off, just turns in and out a little jet. You see the hole right there? There's like a little pin if you don't know what a jet is, and it opens and closes that hole a little bit to let that amount of gas out, depending on how far you turn the knob. What you don't want to do is use your cleaning device, whether it's a needle or a wire, up inside of there. You don't want to mess with the end of that jet in there. You damage that jet, and you might as well just buy a new stove. So instead of doing that, you clean it by the orifice here. The orifice is a lot less expensive than buying a new stove. So as far as the orifice goes, we just get our wrench on there. Just give it a little turn. And it unscrews right out of the body of the stove here. Pretty simple. Now the orifice is a delicate part. It's made out of brass and not steel, so it's a little softer to a needle or certain kind of wires you might use to clean this. Let me see if I can get this focused in here and see if we can see a hole through there. Little tiny hole in there. Like I said, typically looking through it at a light, you'll be able to see if there's any debris in there or not. Whoops, there it goes. Got it. It tried to run away, but I got it. And the hole extends all the way through. So what we want to do to clean an orifice is get any debris out of there. Now I'm going to take my needle here, and this needle will not pass all the way through that hole, but it will extend down into that hole, penetrate through that hole a little bit, and that's all I need to do is just clean whatever debris that is in there out of there. Don't ever put anything in there and like gouge out the hole or try to force it through. If it doesn't go, don't do it. But I know that this needle barely fits down into that hole just a little ways, and I'm not being forceful, I'm just giving a little wiggle. Get it back in there. Just enough to poke whatever debris is in there. And then you look through again. Maybe give it a little tap. Nothing too hard. Remember, this is brass. And by then, you should be able to see through the hole. If you can't, you might have to put the needle into this end. A little tricky, but find the hole. Needle or whatever you use. It's better if you have an object that will extend all the way through that hole, but I don't. So I'm just going to use this needle and be gentle with it. Now I'm going to hang out a minute while I'm going to blow through it. And I can hear the air blowing through there. I know you can't, but that tells me there's an adequate amount of gas coming through there. And as I look through it, I can see a hole through it. So now I know we're good to go. When you hold it up to the light, you'll be able to see if there's any obstruction at all, and I can't see any. So that's pretty much it on cleaning an orifice. Now if you ever get any junk in there that you cannot get out, remember, these are replaceable. The orifice is replaceable, and there's numbers on here. Let me see if I can focus in. This camera's being terrible today. See the numbers? 015556, I believe. It's got a scratch on it, but so you just order that part number from whatever manufacturer. In this case, it's a Coleman. So now that we got that all clean, and I will open this all the way. And then I'm going to blow through that and make sure I got good airflow. Not sure if you can hear that, but I do have adequate flow through there. Now, on this one, you cannot see through it. It's just the way it's designed. You will not be able to see through there. So that's why you just give it a blow through there and make sure you got good airflow. So that's pretty much it for cleaning an orifice and making sure you don't have any debris and getting your stove to burn properly. But now we'll just turn the process around and put everything back together. Just screw this orifice down into the body of the stove. Make sure you don't cross thread it. Make sure it's going in straight. You should never have to force it. Then when you tighten it up, don't tighten it up really hard. Just a little bit of a turn. When it's tight, just not even snug, just a little bit more. Don't over tighten it. So now that the orifice is back in, we'll make sure that we have all these parts together right. Long one, medium, short one, correct. And then remember that this goes into here, right? But what are we forgetting? The washer. Don't forget the washer. And we also know that this will not go past there. So now we can put that right on there and it should stay for us. And remember, put the burner in there first, because if you just try to do this, it don't work. Slide the burner in there first. And then up in there. Simple enough, right? Now we're going to keep all those legs together. Put it on there. Get it to make contact with the threads a little bit. And then we're going to leave our legs right in the start position. Remember those knobs that held the legs from spinning? We got to make sure we're going to keep them in this spot. So, and if they're off to the side, this main leg might not want to go back to the position it needs to be in, because there are catches that hold that leg. So we're going to start there. Just screw the burner and everything back onto the stove body. Simple enough, right? And like I said before, I leave this so it's finger tight, so I don't need a wrench out in the field. When I'm out there, I can always find a little something to poke that orifice hole out if I have to, without removing it. There we go. It's all back together. Let's close this valve. Like I said before, remember I mentioned I didn't take the plastic body apart. There's no need to, so I didn't. If you do, remember that the screw is small. Then this plate will just kind of pull out at the end of that if you ever have to take it apart, and it's pretty simple. It just goes right back in the same holes. You can put it back together. So now that we got it all back together, let's put our fuel on. The screws on there. Now these kind of stoves are kind of tricky, getting the fuel canister to sit on there sometimes, but when it's going right, you'll feel it and it'll screw right on. Before we start it, let's make sure our legs are working correctly. That one's stopping where it needs to, and that one's stopping where it needs to also, so we did that all correctly. Everything else seems tight. This is not pulling off. Orifice isn't tight, we know that. Let's check how we did and start it up. Get our lighter ready. Let's see if we got it all clean. Oh yeah, see, it's got a good burn to it. Nice tall flames. Now when it's burning incorrectly and you have something lodged and stuck in that orifice, you might not get any flame at all. It might just spit and sputter and then go out. Or you might just have a low flame like this. If you got a low flame like that, one, try to heat your fuel. Put it in your coat pocket or up next to your chest where it's warm for a little while and heat it up. Don't ever use flame or the fire or anything that's pretty common sense, but don't ever use anything like that to heat it up. When it's got a true burn, good burn, You should be able to get flames out of it like that. We got her all clean. Successful operation. So there you go. Equipment maintenance, Peak 1 stove 101. There we go. Thanks for watching, everyone. I do recommend this stove. They sell them at Walmart. Hope you liked that little video. In case you ever get a stove like that and you have problems, that's how it comes apart and goes back together. Remember, this is not an instructional video. This is just me showing you how I take mine apart and put it back together. Thanks for watching. See you next time. And remember, as always, have fun.